So hello and welcome back to TNTV in the sweltering heat of this July day, and you can see we're both dressed for the beach and summer, which of course we're not. We're in Birmingham in the middle of the farthest part you can get from the sea that's humanly possible in Britain.
Yes.
Anyway, never mind, we're off to the sea soon. So what is TNTV about this week with my amazing wife? Looking stunning, isn't she? Looking stunning. And of course myself, Tony V. Yes. So this week we thought we will cover what we call opposites.
Yes, hello and welcome back. And yes, this week is specifically going to be interesting for you if you sometimes have fallouts, okay? So we've talked about rows in the car, we've talked about all this, but this is going to give you much more of an understanding of the differences. We talked last week about masculine and feminine, we've talked about the differences between you, but this week is for if you find yourself falling out, but you don't really understand why. And also, it may be hard to take, so brace yourself, because we're going to explain the differences between the typical behaviour of a man when he's not in a good place and the typical behaviour of a woman when she's not in a good place, and why those arguments, in fact, are the kind of hardest to come back to connection from. And so we're going to explain that in detail, and then we're going to talk about what to do about it.
Yeah, so there are two elements to this, and really we're going to cover one in more detail than the other. We'll probably cover the other one in more detail another day. But it's important not to leave this one out. So know when you are disconnected, it's more of what we call an emotional situation. So whilst men don't think they're emotional, what most people are doing is that their ego is taken over. In other words, if you have any emotionality, any negative emotionality, so as a guy you might be getting angry, frustrated with your woman, that sort of thing, that is your ego, not you. That's it.
Yes.
Now, whatever's going on in your woman will be some sort of reflection to you of that. But really what's happening is her ego, so I always think of it like a shell, a skin, sometimes like a glass dome I think of it. So it's like her glass dome is then having an intimate relationship with your glass dome. It's not like the real you connected to each other. And the more emotional you are, the more those egos clash into each other. But the magic is that they are somehow a mirror of each other. So whatever's going on in you, know that they are not happy right now either, and that they will have some emotionality going on in them.
Yes, and actually, as you were saying that, I was just thinking it's very similar, very simple. Men are much more simple creatures. So in other words, in an emotional state, as we call it, having emotionality, men tend to do overt things, don't they?
Definitely.
They'll either walk away, or they'll shout, or you know as a man what you do when you're in a bad state, and it tends to be very kind of clear. Women were much more complicated. Often what we're doing when we're not in a good state in ourselves, or we're not happy, for example, is we will say things and do things which actually isn't what the problem is. And this is very difficult for men, and I appreciate this because I'm, hyper aware if I do that. Because I often notice, like the other day, Tony and I were talking about something in the business, and I recognised that I was kind of getting crabby or crotchety about something that we were debating or talking about in the business, when really I should have just said to Tony, actually, I'm feeling really not good, my mom's not well, I haven't seen the kids, the grandchildren, and I'm like, I'm just not happy, I'm not in a good state, and I'm actually taking it out on him. And I think that a lot of men need to understand that about women, is that actually they need to not believe what they're hearing. Because women will do stuff when actual fact there's something else going on. And of course, girls, you know that what we said in the past is that we need to deal with what's going on inside of us, just like a man needs to deal with what's going on inside of him. And so it's not an excuse, the fact that something else is going on, it's just the fact that we deal with it differently. But as Tony said, what it is it's actually like a mirrored reflection. So it can look completely different.
But it will hold the same energy. So
yes.
That's part one, and I didn't want to miss that out because it's so important just to know that. Once you know that, of course, you can start to diffuse it. But the thing we really wanted to cover actually follows on from last week's masculine and feminine word. So trusting that you did the exercise, and if you missed that one, it's obviously below this one, so you can just click it. It's called masculine and feminine, and do the exercise. It's one of the most well, it's, what do you call it? What's the word? Well, the biggest learnings I ever had that, you know,
Came
taught
from
me
that.
about this stuff by doing that exercise. So, you know, get your pen and pad and go back and do last week's exercise if you didn't do it. Because what we're going to talk about now is definitely that, you know, the biggest challenge when you get disconnected is you attract the opposite, what I call polarity. So if a man, when he gets a bit, you know, angry, should we just use the word angry, frustrated, whatever derivative of angry you want to use, then some men, like Nicki says, go more internal, some go more external. And some of the men, the more external men, will turn up their male dial. They'll turn it up. And they might move to what I call unhealthy masculine behaviour, which we label with a word called macho. So if women, you meet macho man, then you will be doing the polar opposite of macho man, which sadly is equally as destructive in a relationship. So guys, we have to just go, okay, heavily angry is macho behaviour. It terrifies the arse, if that's a fair word to use, off of women, and it in no way solves anything. So we have to learn as guys how to adjust our masculine energy so that we're healthy. And you can even use the word dominant. I use the word dominant a lot. You can be dominant with your woman, but it's got to be healthy, not unhealthy. Unhealthy becomes macho, and that's going to receive the opposite polarity in your woman, which
is, yes, because I mean, what's how Tony's explained it is very, very key. This is very, very key, because what it will do for a man is that it does frighten us as women. But of course, what happens, because we're in emotionality as well, as we said before, is we tend to go to very unhealthy feminine. So remember the masculine and feminine words that we did last week. We've actually perhaps we ought to send them the chart, because actually we put all the masculine words here and the feminine words here, and you'll see that what we do as women is what we go like off the bottom of the chart of femininity. So we're not being allowing and letting go of control and everything. We're actually being passive aggressive. So what we do is when a man goes into kind of that macho place, we go into trying to make him feel guilty. And that's why we call it passive aggressive, because it's got like a passive, you did this to me kind of tone to it. And its outcome is to make that man feel guilty. Now, as you can see, now both these behaviours, let's be really, really clear, both these behaviours are very unhealthy. And sometimes, to be fair to men, women tend to go, well, that's just unacceptable behaviour that men do, and I've every right to be, you know, telling him that, you know, that he shouldn't do that and he should feel guilty about it. But of course, to go from that to any level of connection, both of you have to see what you're doing. And of course, you know, the reason why we're harping on these is because actually normal, healthy, masculine and feminine women can sometimes go into that place, and it's very destructive to the relationship, very destructive. And actually it's really, really clear to see that it's actually a mirror of each other, and that unless one of you stops, and we always say this, don't we? Once you know you're in that disconnection, you cannot wait for the other person to stop. You have to go inside and go, look, if I continue to do this, so I would say to myself, if I continue to be passive aggressive and to try and make him feel guilty about something, then it won't get any better. And Tony in himself will be saying, look, if I can continue to get a bit, you know, I mean, he doesn't really do anger, but he'll do a bit, you know, grumpy with me and a bit shouty with me. And he would go, look, if I continue to do this, I'm just going to get more of this behaviour. So what we do is we both take it our responsibility inside of ourselves to know that we need to stop. And of course, all the adrenaline and all the chemicals are going, as you always say, don't
absolutely.
you?
That's your biggest challenge, is once you've got, you know, macho man, you are full of adrenaline and testosterone, which wants to fight and kill, you know. But that's not what your woman wants, is it? So we have to learn to turn that back down. Now, girls, you have to understand it takes time for that chemistry to subside. So often when you see a man like this, just understand he's chemicalized in a not healthy way, and sometimes, you know, give them some space. You'll need a bit of space for that chemistry to sort of calm down.
Yes.
Now, women's chemistry, of course, is also blown out of all,
Yes.
you know, logical state, shall we call,
Yes.
and that likewise takes time to subside. It's sort of true that a man's chemistry takes longer to get back together than a woman's, but often if your head keeps going around, oh, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, all you do is keep firing off more, and that's why some arguments can go on for days, weeks, months and years, yeah?
Absolutely.
Because what your ego's doing is going, it's your
Yes.
fault, it's not my fault. So,
Yes.
you know, the number one thing is to always go, well, I am responsible for my chemistry. Nobody came and injected me with anger. Somehow I created that because what I saw outside of myself, I then interpreted that, sometimes completely unconsciously, into this chemistry which I created. So that's
Yeah,
the
and
starting point of uncreating it.
Absolutely. And just in case you're sitting there going, well, you know, I cannot really relate to that. The other way round, which is just the same, only the other way round, is that there are some women who get very, very angry and get very verbal and get very aggressive and all those sorts of things. And even if that's you only a bit, you know, you need to be truthful and recognise whether you do that. And some men go into the opposite of being healthy dominant, or, you know, going beyond healthy dominant, and they go into what we call surrender. Now, surrender in a woman is a healthy place to be. It's a trusting, let go kind of place to be. In a man, it's like a, oh, you know, what
Have
do
it
you
your
all say?
way.
Have it your way.
We'll do
I
it
give
your
up.
way.
But actually, inside,
That's the worst thing you
he's
can do.
just as emotionally kind of got, as Tony always calls it. And it's exactly the opposite from the macho passive aggressive to the macho woman almost. And the man who will often go, oh yeah, have it your way. And then it
That
will be
makes it-
basically be passive aggressive in the same
But
way.
it also makes it, you know, unsolvable taking that
Absolutely.
tact. So, look, we've covered a very, very gigantic subject in a very
Yes.
few minutes. So I trust that you've got something from it. I mean, if you only got, oh my God, they're talking about something and we do that, then that's
Yes.
absolutely useful. Remember the emergency support button above us. Click that, because when you download the document that goes with that, there's one for guys, one for girls. Make sure you download the right one. I saw a
Yes.
girl the other day downloading the guys one. Maybe she was just being nosy, and that's okay.
But it actually says for girls to read, meaning for girls to use, and for men to read, men to use.
There is
So-
a slight difference in the wording, not
Yeah.
loads, but slight. Now, when you download that, then what happens is you'll see a way that we've used many, many times to diffuse this pent-up energy, as you might call it, that gets you out of connection. So, you know, don't be frightened to press that button. It's all completely free and there to be used and abused, as I often say.
Well, yes.
Please do, you know, please do. The more you practice, the better. And if you've got questions, you really start, you know, don't be frightened to ask for help. It's what we do, you know. It's great sharing this stuff with you, but sometimes you need to get a bit more hands-on with us, and we're good with that too. So feel free to ask for help at any time. So from me, in the sweltering heat
Birmingham.
of Brummyland in our lovely studio, and my poor wife who just wants to run outside, I know, I can tell. We will see you hopefully a bit cooler next week. So bye for now.
Bye.